This time on Food Traditions. Personal chef Austin makes dinner for Maddy.
This is a big bite.
It's Cornish Game Hen with salad and roasted potatoes on the side, plus a shrimp scampi snack to get things started. It's a classic dinner party tradition for any occasion. This time on Food Traditions.
Welcome to Dinner with Maddy. I am here with my friend Chef Austin. And what have you made for dinner for me today, Austin?
Well, what we did today was we did a roasted Cornish game hen, roasted red potatoes, and a nice kale salad with a balsamic and mustard vinaigrette.
Now let's see how this is done.
Well, just prepping the shrimp, either they'll come frozen or fresh, but step one is getting that shell off. You can leave the tails on. Some people actually collect the shells too if they're going to make a seafood stock, and they'll use those shells to cook down to give a stock flavor. Normally I just discard them, but then you want to just use a little paring knife, cut right down the ridge of the back, get rid of that vein as they call it, which is mostly excrement. But once those are cleaned out, just make sure they're thawed out perfectly, and then once they come to just about room temperature, a little bit cool, you can just kind of throw them right into a medium heat pan with whatever you want, oil, or you can even throw them on the grill at that point. I love grilled shrimp. So after we've cleaned and deveined all the shrimp here, they're still raw and they're come almost to room temperature. You don't want them still frozen in the middle or they won't cook evenly. We're getting our butter to the point where it's starting to bubble, but it's not really brown. Just when they'll start to take the heat, because shrimp tend to cook so quickly and people tend to overcook them and they become almost rubbery rather than have that nice little almost snap bite to them. And as long as you just kind of keep moving around a little bit, you'll notice as soon as the color starts to change, really from that kind of opaque to more of that reddish, that they'll actually be done. But you want to make sure you just cook them all the way through on about medium heat.
Is that true for all kinds of shrimp?
Most types, you find that some of the bigger prawns, the larger prawns, sometimes they'll take a little bit more heat to get down to the core. Mm-hmm. But these are 16-20 counts, so 16 to 20 for a pound.
Okay.
They're typically, they'll cook medium heat, one side, flip it over. Once they've got that same color on both sides, they're done. But they do make 2-3 counts, which are basically like lobster tails. And those, typically they get poached a little bit more.
What is your favorite shrimp?
My brother once brought me some tiger prawns from New York City that were 2-3 count, and they were tails are 5-6 inches long. And they taste like lobster at that point. They're no longer shrimp.
I've never seen a huge shrimp, except for in the store.
Yeah, I've never seen a 2-count shrimp before.
A what?
A 2-count shrimp,
count?
yeah.
So that's about this big?
Oh God, yeah, two of them will equal a pound. So they're about 8 ounces each.
That's freaking
And
big.
they come from, they like Indonesia or the Philippines. Everything's bigger in other countries. Well.
Yeah, that's probably why they eat less.
All right.
That's good. Hot.
All right, so now just kind of for my version of a little bit of a stuffing for the inside of the Cornish game hens, just kind of finely dicing a little bit of celery and carrots. You don't really need to be too particular, at least I'm not. But about an even mix, fairly small, just so they can fit inside the body cavity, and eventually this mixture will make the inside of the birds just a little bit more moist as it goes through the oven. And again, you can do all kinds of veggies in there or whatever you'd like. Most people, anytime you see a recipe online or on TV, they're using celery and carrots.
Is it because of the moisture content?
I think partially it is because of the water content, but also that they're fairly neutral in flavor. Also, like, you can include herbs inside of your mixture. We could put in a little bit of thyme if you prefer thyme or sage or anything like that, oregano, but basically it's kind of at your own whim what you want to do with it. I mean, this is pretty standard. So you don't need a whole lot just because the Cornish hens are the quarter the size of a chicken, so whatever it calls for. And a lot of the same recipes that you want on chicken, just transfer over to a Cornish hen and downsize a little bit. It's perfect.
It's just like a small version of turkey too.
It is. Same with any size of these game birds or any chicken-like bird. It tastes like chicken.
So you're a Somali as well. So what would you pair this with wine if you're going to have wine with it?
Ooh. Well, it depends on your preparation, but anything chicken or like a white meat, pork, even with the shrimp that we started out with, I mean, I typically like to go a little lighter but drier. So if you're into red wines, Pinot Noir or Pinot Meunier, typically from France or Burgundy region. Same with Burgundy, I would also pair, a nice white Chablis or a white Chardonnay.
That sounds beautiful.
Getting nice and mixed up, so each bird gets the same amount of celery and carrots.
Now what are we going to do here now? Now that you have the chickens out and the veggies are all cut up.
Well, right now we're going to take the veggies that we have cut up and we have all the cavities cleaned out inside of our birds. So step 2 here is kind of just gently stuffing the cavities. I mean, you're going to miss a lot, but just making sure they're fairly well filled. We're also going to put a little bit of a tab of butter, or once we get the butter melted to coat the outside of the birds, we can also use a little bit of that on the inside that helps just cook the veggies a little bit further. And who doesn't like butter?
Butter goes with everything.
Butter goes with everything. So, as you can see, we're just going to get them stuffed, and then eventually, once these birds are stuffed, we're going to cross the legs. We don't have to cross them, but we'll, you can see how that kind of closes up the opening there. And we're going to tie those shut like we did with the wings right over the breast. So all that tying basically uniforms the whole bird into cooking at the same time. Otherwise, you'll end up getting, the legs will cook before the breast, and you'll get an unevenly cooked bird, and then one person will get a piece of dry meat, the others will get, right, something that's underdone.
Can't have no dry meat. Push it down for you.
You also want to make sure that you take all the giblets out first. If I didn't say that, because there have been times that I've been over to people's houses where, it smells a bit like there's
Burnt
some plastic cooking, and they realize that they've actually been cooking the giblets inside of the plastic bag of the bird the whole time.
First time I ever made a turkey, I did that.
It happens. It's nothing against anybody, but it's something people often look over.
It's easy enough to mix, like, especially if you don't have it all the way thawed out and you're like, screw this, I'm going to put it in the oven. You just stuff it and you forget that you didn't take it out.
So another thing, right before we start to tie it up, I just like to give it one quick little bit of a seasoning, just simple salt and pepper. Just gives it an even coat, and then once we end up painting the birds with a little bit of oil, butter, and herb mixture, which will end up making the skin all crispy, you'll have a little bit of that salt to actually kind of draw out some of the water that's in the skin, allowing it to crisp up as well. So whatever seasonings you like, I keep things really, really simple. It's always about the same thing. I'm a salt and pepper kind of guy.
I'll have to watch you tie their butts up, so I know how to do that.
Honestly, as long as you use the right string, there's no real wrong way to tie the rear end up.
What kind of string is that?
This is just kitchen twine, or cotton string. It doesn't really much matter. It's really not going to burn in the oven. But this can take a little bit of doing if the legs aren't going to cooperate. So one thing I like to do is I'll tie one leg first, and then I'll loop it around the other one so it stays. But you just want to make sure it's firm because they will loosen a little bit. And then you can trim any excess. I kind of go over and under.
Like a figure eight?
Like a figure eight. And again, you're just trying to keep the legs together. You're not really, this isn't for looks and really not going to stay on the bird. So okay, once it's wrapped around, it'll stay like that. So even if you can't decide to tie a knot, as long as it's looped around as the chicken bakes, that's going to swell up a little bit and it'll keep it tight. It also gives you a little bit more space in between the birds on the oven rack rather than being splayed out. The more you have things separated, the more that oven air, the heat is going to be able to circulate. It's also why I have a little oven rack that I put things up on, so your drippings go underneath.
So, like aerates.
Air can go underneath, and it can, you know, heat the bird from 360 degrees rather than just from the top and it's sitting in its own juices. And these are big for Cornish hens. These are the biggest ones I've seen in a while. So, you know, you can see that, you know, each person, even if we half these, would still be a really nice, small, intimate presentation. It's just nicer than having one big turkey on a table for 2 people or one big chicken, or, you know, individual just makes it kind of nice. All right, so now we're just going to get a little bit of butter and oil. You can use olive oil, you can use just butter or just oil, but I'm just kind of melting them together here, where I'll add just a little bit of garlic powder. This is for coating the outside of the birds before they go into the oven, and this butter mixture will give it that kind of nice golden brown crust and that crispy skin that everybody likes on the bird too, which is kind of where all the flavor is anyway. It's kind of difficult to get the salt really infused down into the deep breast meat, so the skin's where it's at. You got to include all your flavor on there.
I think because I've just never had good skin. That sounded weird.
So basically, you know, now that these are all tied up, they're all kind of ready to go into the oven. Just give them a once over. I've kind of got like a little, once this melts down, I'll just give them a nice base, nice coat right over the top. Make sure it gets in the crevices. Even if it drips over the bird, it doesn't matter if it gets down the bottom. A lot of people will end up putting their birds on top of vegetables. Like we could have layered carrots, celery, potatoes underneath the bird. And then the drippings go down into your vegetables and help cook the vegetables. So there's always a way to do it that way. But
so like if you didn't have the rack,
right,
you could actually layer vegetables.
You could set it right on top of the vegetables, yeah. And it would kind of keep it a little raised up. At the same time, the fat that drips off of the bird during its cooking process kind of, it almost makes your vegetables taste a little bit like chicken.
It's like one of those tips, like when you're doing things and you don't have, say, somewhere you don't have the rack or something like that. Then
right. Or, you know, it's all going into the roaster oven, and especially with birds of this size, you know, your veggies and your birds are probably going to cook about in the same amount of time. I mean, the carrots will probably take 45 minutes, as well as these will probably take 45 minutes as well. But
what else other spice you putting on there? I can smell an herb, but I can't figure out what it is.
It's just a garlic powder. It's really, it's not too much. Now, see, if you wanted a little bit of a dried thyme, or you can put fresh rosemary over the top. Some people even include lemon, which is actually really, really nice. I'm actually going to pick these up a little bit. Would you hold that?
Hold this?
Yeah. So this is where I'm just going to get a little bit of this excess butter right there into the cavity to help those veggies kind of baste in there and cook. Do we lay it back down?
I feel like we're doing something really delicious chicken.
All right. So, good there. So now the birds are basically prepped, ready for the oven. Oven's preheating to 400. You will take, normally for a full-size chicken, which I normally judge things on, is about an hour and 15 minutes. But it depends on whether you cook your birds at 350, 400, or I've even heard of people cooking them on 450. Every web page, every person, you know, is going to say something differently. I do 400 for chicken and poultry. I find that it doesn't cook it too fast and dry it out, and it doesn't slow cook it to the point where you have flabby skin. You can still get the crisp skin with the 400 degrees.
I can remember that.
But these should cook with the size they are, all tied up, stuffed, probably 45 minutes. So Once we get these ready, we'll pop them in the oven, which is very, very soon here. Then just put on the timer and probably check them. I would like to check them at the 40-minute mark. I always check them a little bit ahead of time.
Okay.
Just give them a little cut, get a temperature gauge in them. Just make sure they aren't overcooking too early. And then we can let them rest. All right,
Does
so
it matter
grab the
which
oven door, top one. All right, you want to put it onto either the middle to top shelf. Putting it on the bottom, you won't get that circulation of heat. So 400, we put it in at right around 430. So we'll check it at about 10 after 5. Sweet.
Chicken. We're gonna have chicken.
Alright, so one thing we did with the potatoes is after we diced them, they've already been in the microwave for about 4 minutes, so it makes them easier to cut through. It also gives them less time in the oven to crisp up. I just figure it kind of takes a little bit of the oil too when you go to toss them. So we've diced them into about quarters, if you can see, and then put our seasonings on them. Did something simple. I did just salt and pepper, a little bit of garlic powder, really nothing too big, although you can add fresh parsley, you can add rosemary, oregano, basically whatever you want, whatever you like to flavor them to be. Even people love Old Bay on potatoes, and I do too. But add that oil, toss them all together in a bowl. We lay them out on a baking sheet. And now that we've done that, they are about ready to go into the oven, and they will go into the oven about 20 minutes before we pull the Cornish hens out, so that everything kind of comes out at the same time. And they won't need much time because they've already been prepped. They're on their way. Now it's a waiting game again.
Smells so good in here.
So now we got some already pre-washed kale that's already chopped up. You can chop it up yourself, but not when they make it that's already pre-washed and pre-chopped. But for a dressing here, I'm gonna kind of throw together a few different things that is kind of a variation of one of my favorite dressings, and that just starts with a decent scoopful maybe of Dijon mustard. Just gives a little bit of spice to it. You can add as much or as least, much or as little as you like. Yeah, tongue tied. It's like already pre-adding like fresh ground pepper on your salad.
I love pepper notes too.
Starting off with just a base vinegar, I put about the same amount as the mustard that I have, and then about that same amount of oil, maybe a little bit more. Now typically I use olive oil, but I don't have any today, so I'm using the rest of our grapeseed oil. And for a little bit of extra, I have avocado oil. And avocado oil is also one of those that has the very high smoking point, but it also adds kind of a vegetal flavor. So it's actually probably really good for, it is good for salads, as well as kind of searing all type of like greens, like sauteing greens and stuff like that. The avocado oil is really good. And it's also
Smells
really good for
good.
your skin.
I've heard that.
So it's fantastic. You can have a
Like
date,
coconut oil. Coconut oil is the same.
Exactly. You get a massage along with your dinner. And then I just include a little bit of a balsamic, and the balsamic kind of adds a little hint of sweetness. It balances out. And if you really want it a little extra sweet, which is nice because the kale can tend to be bitter, either you can add a little teaspoon of sugar, or I just add a little bit of honey. Yeah. All right, so a little bit of lemon added to that. Then we just let that sit, and by the time we're ready to just kind of toss the salad, any of the veggies left over.
Yeah,
Tossing the salad.
we saw
I
that.
can't help
Totally
it.
just out of the corner of my eye.
The salad.
Just the salad. You can toss it with your hands. You can do whatever you want.
That's not what I was thinking.
Testing the temperature of our birds. You kind of want to just go in right there into the crease. A little bit longer. Another few degrees to go. These are dense birds, so it's kind of hard to tell when you have things smaller than a chicken. Probably no more than 10-15 minutes, but that's okay because the potatoes, they're not quite there too, so it'll come out just about perfect.
That smells really good.
Alright, so I think we are done here. These will come out. They look pretty well done. We'll give them a quick check, but we can shut off the oven. The potatoes can stay inside just to keep warm. But just gonna put the right down there in the corner.
What temperature should they be?
Right in the joint, by the time you take them out, should be about 165 because they'll rise continually from that. Plus their legs are pretty small. So what we can actually do is if we don't trust our thermometer, we can always give them a quick cut. You still do have like a little bit of pink down in the corner there. So with our oven still on, the larger the birds here still isn't quite done yet, but a few more minutes. All right, so we made a little bit more than we need of the dressing, which is kind of a simple shallot mustard vinaigrette. A little bit goes a long way on the salad, so it's better to put a little too little and a little too much. Give it a quick toss and you can keep it in the fridge until you're ready to serve. Just want to make sure it's completely covered because it will all seep to the bottom. There we go. Now, one thing I really like to put on the kale salad that I don't have is pumpkin seeds. Toasted pumpkin seeds are fantastic.
Why is that fantastic? Does it give it like
A little textural difference, yeah. Plus, they kind of have a really nice little nutty flavor that just really just pairs well with the kale. So, we're looking pretty good. So that's pretty good. Maybe just a tad more, but we're there. All right. And now to bring the birds out of the oven. Yeah, we'll cancel it because they're probably done.
Now, why do you want to let them rest for 10 minutes?
Most people don't let their meat rest when it comes out of an oven long enough, but the meat actually has time to come up a little bit, or technically down a little bit in temperature, and it makes it more tender. At the same point, you'll probably burn your mouth right now really bad if you took a bite of it. So it just kind of lets everything cool down a little bit. The heat is kind of allowing everything to steam. So just takes a moment and we'll be ready to go. All right, Maddie, have at it.
Thank you. Take a big bite.
It's freaking delicious.
Yeah, but it's warm too. That works for me. What about the guy behind the camera?
It's really good. You want to bite?
Yeah.
You want to try a bite?
All right. Well, that's my simple Cornish game hen with roasted red potatoes and kale salad.
That was delicious. Thanks for having dinner with Maddie,
Thank you.
and we'll see you next time.